All right, so thank you very much for joining me. Our guest today is Sonia Prashar. She is the president and founder of SPPR Inc., which is a boutique PR agency here in Toronto. And she's got a deep track record, over 25 years of experience in communications, digital marketing, and public relations in general. So super excited to chat with her today and to talk about all things PR, comms, and media. So Sonia, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much, Eric, for having me today. Excited to talk to you and your students. Great to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess my first question before we get into our conversation is just if you could give the listeners a little bit of an insight into your journey. So how you got into the industry, how you decided that you wanted to work in comms, and sort of what that journey looked like for you.
Yeah, so I started off in India. My father ran one of the largest, oldest advertising agencies. So grew up in the family business, seeing him run advertising and communications, and was very inspired by his whole sort of relationship building approach. And so while I was in university, I, would go into the office and I'd work there as well. I worked there as a summer student, continue to work there after university as well, and kind of got an insight into the way the whole sort of relationship model works, and that's where I got a keen sort of look ahead to where my journey would take me as well. And from there, I worked with a UK-based PR company that was based in India. Did some work with a French company, Louis Vuitton Tennessee, doing marketing and PR for them. And then from there, I moved to Canada, where I've been on the agency side and then running my own business for a few years.
Yeah, that's great. So it's in your genes, it's genetic.
In the genes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll ask you, I mean, this wasn't a question that we had kind of previously discussed, but I know it's a question that a lot of viewers probably would like to hear. Can you talk a little bit about that transition, coming to Canada, having, quite a bit of experience, arguably, in another global market? What was that transition like, and how did you cope with it?
It was an interesting transition because it was pre-September 11th. So I worked with LVMH, and because I had a global role with them working in Asia, I was fortunate enough that at that time they actually had a job waiting for me in Canada. So I worked with LVMH's distribution house, Louis Vuitton Tennessee, doing PR and marketing for their champagne and cognac and wine brands. The transition was easy from a work perspective because I'd been familiar with the brands. But where I really found was a bit of a learning experience was trying to understand the local market, because obviously the Canadian landscape was very different. I did, however, find a lot of similarities in the general way of working. And I think those similarities were able to take me forward and sort of get adapted to the market very quickly as well. So there were a lot of synergies that I thought were useful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And it brings me to a topic that I really wanted to delve into with you, which is media relations and understanding those local markets and being really that media relations guru. I know I had the privilege of working with you probably 15 years ago for the first time, and we've kind of continued our working relationship ever since. But ever since I met you, you were really known as kind of that media relations maverick. So can you talk a little bit about what drew you to that sort of aspect of the business, and how you really thrived in that role as you grew your career?
So I've always been a news junkie, self-proclaimed news junkie. So even, when I was in India, I'd like to devour the news, see what's out there, how can we utilize that as part of our sort of, client mandates. And then when I moved to Canada, that was a great way to actually learn how the market works, how the media works, what are the different beats, who's covering what. So that's where I had a lot of personal interest in different industries, both from a business as well as consumer lifestyle perspective. And I think that really helped me understand the landscape and the evolution of the landscape as well. So it also allowed me to sort of set myself apart in the PR world in terms of what I bring to the table and what my passion points are. On understanding what the media like to cover and being that resource for them. And that again goes back to the whole relationship model, because that's where I've sort of evolved my PR journey as well with the media that I work and the clients that we service as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting, and it's something that I think you have been able to really develop those long-lasting relationships with media, and that really, from what I see, is the bread and butter of your business right now, right? You're able to sort of take those deep relationships that you have and then offer that value to clients through your agency SPPR. But I'm curious about how things have changed, right? So obviously, it's no big surprise. Shrinking newsrooms on a yearly basis, budget cuts constantly, layoffs. We've got the rise of kind of influencer marketing. The pay-to-play model has really kind of taken over a lot of the earned media that had prior been, the focus of PR professionals. So how has that impacted, I guess, your role and your business and model in general at SPPR?
So at SPPR, our big sort of sweet spot is working with media, both earned, paid, and also a lot of influencers. What we've done really well that I am proud of is the fact that we've kind of pivoted and evolved with the changing landscape, which has obviously been extremely challenging based on obviously what we're all seeing. It still goes back to, something that I deeply believe in, and that is making sure you understand who you're pitching, having and fostering those deep relationships, making sure that your client, narratives and angles are pitched in a way that addresses the so what factor, because that helps the media to want to come back to you. Because our goal always is to not just get that one interview, but it's to make sure that we are building thought leadership for our clients. And we've done that by showcasing integrity, by showcasing and demonstrating knowledge of the media, beats or the people that we are pitching and their storylines, being extremely targeted in the type of pitches we sent them, and that really helps us stay abreast of some of the changes and also make sure that with digital transformation, with AI, with some of the other new themes and hot button topics that we are seeing, how do we sort of navigate those changing environments as well?
Yeah. And I mean, it's an interesting topic. I was having a conversation here in the office earlier today about what the value of traditional media is. And I guess there are some people that would argue that there's been a decline in value in traditional media. And I would be curious to get your thoughts on, specifically your opinion, but also what your clients tell you in terms of their feedback. How do you perceive the value of traditional media in, today's day and age where we've got a lot of people who have cut the cord? They're no longer consuming media on the TV or on the radio, but most of it through their phones and digital devices. What are your takeaways on the evolution of that landscape?
So I'm still a firm believer that earned media is here to stay. I think the difference in today's landscape is doing PR and securing earned media in a more thoughtful and purposeful way. It has to be amplified with some other strategic, initiatives, including some paid, including some content. So it has to be a mix of earned paid content for sure. I think earned media is here to stay. It lends a lot of credibility. It offers a lot of validation. And at the end of the day, it is a cost-effective way to get somebody's name, a brand company, name out. So I certainly don't think it's going anywhere. I think the important thing that's going to be is navigating how do we actually tell that story in a purposeful way, and who are the media that we want to go to, and making sure it's more strategic from that perspective.
And do you think that because it's become maybe more challenging to secure earned media, that the value of it has actually increased? Like I think about this all the time, and I think about how, there used to be, dozens of daily newspapers, used to be many different television channels that we could be strategically pitching in any given campaign. That number has really shrunk over the last decade. Do you feel that that is added value, and the fact that you still have those great relationships, it really brings that value then to your clients who can capitalize on it?
Absolutely. So I think it allows us the opportunity to be a lot more specific in our efforts on who we're going to. And that's where focusing more on a quality versus quantity approach, making sure that we are very thoughtful in the terms of the kind of media we approach, because we know that is going to translate into an ROI perspective. It helps to move the needle. Just this morning, we had a call with one client who had done a CBC syndication interview, and they let us know that they saw a spike in their business almost 30% in that 1 hour that they saw that interview run. So
Wow.
when I hear things like that, it makes me really happy, validates the work that we do. And again, for me, that's showcasing that earned media is here to stay.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, right? And even, in my day-to-day role at Meridian, we see this all the time. It's not necessarily the initial piece of coverage that really drives the impact, but it's the digital amplification afterwards, right? Being able to showcase that on your digital profiles, your digital platforms, your website, through your thought leadership efforts on LinkedIn, whatever the case may be, and all of those things combined, I think, still speak to the value of earned media for sure.
It does. And one thing that we hear from media a lot, because we do a lot of media audits, as you know, we talk to media constantly, what's working, what's not working. And one thing that we hear a lot is the continuity piece. They're looking for spokespeople and, on leaders to have an opinion and insightful commentary on a regular basis, on a regular cadence versus the stop-start approach. And I think that also allows you the opportunity then to make sure that you're seen as thought leaders within specific industries as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's all very good points for sure. I want to turn the conversation a little bit to an area that I think is really interesting for me, and I'm sure for a lot of listeners. But it's this, I guess, transition that you made from working in a PR agency to then, working freelance, doing some sort of consulting, but then inevitably starting your own entrepreneurial journey and launching your own agency. Well, first of all, I would love to just get the backstory on what led to you making that decision to, leave a very successful agency career and kind of branch out on your own.
So I've always been a closet entrepreneur, even though it was in the genes and coming from a business family. But I was fortunate to work with a great agency in Canada when I first moved here, Apex Public Relations, which is where you and I first met. Lots of great mentors still that I, regularly talk to there. So I had two little people. We don't have a lot of family in town. And when our son was one, our nanny quit. And at that point, there was really no option for me but to stay home to take care of our 1-year-old and our 4-year-old. So I went in to give in my resignation to my boss at that time, and they were like, "Why don't you freelance?" Because I used to do a lot of the media relations for all of our clients. And that's where kind of the media relations business started. We just completed 12 years yesterday, which we're very proud of the milestone for SPPR. Thank you. But that's where the sort of, the freelance model started. And from there, I started freelancing for Apex on a number of their files from a media relations consultancy perspective. That opened the door to many other agencies, and I kind of worked with a lot of big and small agencies and was very fortunate to have the opportunity to work on a few different, very exciting clients and mandates as well.
And this was all, pre-remote work, pre kind of hybrid work, right? I mean, back in 12 years ago, like you mentioned, it was very much about being in the office, putting in the work. And so how did that impact you as someone who was used to being around high performing teams, very, energetic environments? All of a sudden you are kind of a team of one. What was that like?
It was a bit isolating in the beginning, but it gave me the flexibility to do what I wanted to do and not have to give up my day job, but at the same time keep my mommy hat on. So I got to balance that. And I did get the opportunity with the agency work to go into the office. They were, a lot of collaboration opportunities. So I could make those times work based on what my schedule could allow. The first 4 years of my sort of going solo was working with agencies. And then from there, it spiraled into the sort of boutique model, because that's where, thanks to a lot of my agency friends, I started getting some smaller, accounts that those morphed into businesses and a lot of longstanding clients that we've had today, including Meridian, which we're very proud of. So that's where it morphed into a virtual agency model. So we've been ahead of the curve, pre-COVID, and we've always had a remote model, never had a fancy office that clients pay for, and that seemed to be the DNA of what we've done and has worked really well for us.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think certainly ahead of the curve in many ways, absolutely. You mentioned relationships like multiple times throughout the last few minutes, and I'm just curious. I think a lot of people who work in the creative industries, they have this dream of branching out, of doing something on their own, whether it's freelancing, entrepreneurship, starting their own agency. What do you feel, you've gone through the experience, what do you feel that sweet spot is for, time kind of in market, building your expertise, making relationships. How long do you think you really need to wait before you decide to make that decision to jump out and hang a shingle and do that on your own? Do you think that you've got to have a certain amount of years of experience, or does it tend to vary depending on the individual?
I think it varies by individual, but I think the biggest thing that I learned was when are you ready to take a risk? For me, this was a risk to go out on my own, and I had to go hustle, try to get clients, especially when I started the sort of stopping the work on the consultancy side for the agencies. So I think when you're ready and have the capacity to take that risk, that's when, for me, that's when the right time would be. But obviously, that varies for different people.
Yeah, yeah. And were there times when you regretted it or sort of thought, what am I doing? I'm in over my head here?
My only regret is why I didn't do the sooner.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
love the balance. I love the fact that I've had the opportunity, which I'm really grateful about, having worked with so many agencies, big and small, and then running my own business now for about 12 years, that I've had to work with so many different clients, so many different wonderful, amazing brands. And being a Canadian company, and especially in today's volatile environment, a lot of those experiences I can take in today's landscape. And I just wish we had done this sooner. That would be my only regret today.
Yeah, well, that's a good lesson, a good takeaway for sure. For anyone who's thinking of it, I guess no time like the present, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And I guess that leads me to the next question, which is around, you've gone out on your own, you're freelancing, you're consulting, you're having some success. Again, you're reaping the rewards of still being able to scratch that itch of a business woman while still having time with your kids, your family. But at some point, you get to this kind of precipice where you decide, I want to grow, I want to expand, I want to build something a little more robust. What was it that sort of led you, I guess, to that decision versus maybe just sticking as a solopreneur or a freelancer more permanently?
For us, the change was when we had two big clients that came to us looking for some strategic counsel, which we knew could grow into bigger businesses. And I knew at that time, just me being the marketing, the PR, doing everything on my own is not going to cut it. I needed some additional resources. So that's when I really had to think hard. Who are the people that can help me take this business to the next level? How can we service our clients? What's the right next step to move forward? And that's when we kind of changed that model into just me being the one person shop to actually bringing in a network of people that I could utilize. The goal always was to have like a bit of a one-stop model approach where you could come to SPPR for PR, but if you needed writing or if you needed digital marketing support or anything else based on some of the networks that we've had, I could bring those relationships in and the clients get that one-stop model approach.
And I guess it's almost like a collaboration of different independents, right? At that end of the spectrum, where you're bringing in all the connections that you've made throughout your career. But obviously, it was very successful, and it was something that I think brought a lot of value to your clients. How did that change your mindset, though, as someone who is very much like a practitioner to now being very much someone who is running a business?
So I think it was bringing the right people. So I've been very fortunate that I've got some very senior veterans from the industry who've been working with us for a long time. And it's looking at people with different skills that I don't have, skills that they don't have, and how do we complement each other? So that's why we've been very particular in terms of the team members that we bring in. How do we make sure that they're all adding value to our client set, and then helping to make sure that we are all keeping abreast with current trends and making sure that we are doing things that we want to be doing and beyond. So it's finding the right fit, it's finding the right people, and then making sure that we've all got areas that we can learn from each other. I still learn from my team daily. I still learn from everybody on my team. So I think there's a lot of support and collaboration that happens there, and it's an opportunity for all of us to grow as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And how big is the team now?
So there's 5 of us.
Gotcha. And
Small and
is
mighty.
I was going to say small and mighty, and is the aspiration to keep it that way, or do you see sort of bigger teams and bigger budgets and bigger clients in your future?
So while we've got 5 core team members, I will say we've got a massive network of partners that we do bring in regularly and as we need them for client projects. Um, my sweet spot would be keeping it under 10 people for a core team, just because I don't see myself wanting to be that big agency environment. I like the boutique approach. It helps us to be more targeted also with our clients and give them the attention that I know they deserve. And that's actually one of the learnings I've had working with some of the bigger agencies as well, and some of the pain points that I've heard clients have. So we want to make sure we offer that one-on-one service, that customized approach, making sure we offer senior counsel. And this allows us to resource our clients appropriately as well. And that's kind of the sweet spot for us.
Yeah, I think it's huge, right? And I mean, having myself worked with a lot of larger agencies and then mid-size agencies, it's just a very different relationship that you can develop with a smaller group, right? And again, the attention to detail, the way that they can really immerse themselves in your business, get to know your business, and then support you by virtue of that is just it's very, very different and very unique. So I think that's a great point. Yeah.
And it allows us to be nimble, but we can mobilize quickly as well. So I think that's one of the benefits that we've seen is, again, a differentiator that we have that we're proud of, because we don't have set, things in place that, oh, we only go by these sort of processes. We can pivot very quickly. And we've seen and heard from our clients that they actually appreciate that flexibility as well. So that is definitely an important element for us to keep going forward with.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me kind of move the conversation to a different area. Obviously, now you've got a team that you're managing. I know you've got interns that you sort of roll in on a regular basis, and other sort of consultants that you work with. And I'm sure you're getting resumes sent to you on a daily basis, especially now as we ramp up for spring internship season. What are some of the most important, I guess, pieces of advice that you would give to someone who is either starting in their career or maybe looking to make a transition from another industry into communications?
My biggest piece of advice, and I go back to when I started off and what did I do for myself at that time? I really had to step back and think about what makes me unique, why am I different, and what am I bringing to the table? Making sure that you understand that before you send your resume or a cover letter out, making sure you research the company and what they do, so that way you can communicate effectively on why you're the right fit to be part of that team. So I think those are very important considerations, and that really helped me in my career. The other thing that I would say is don't be afraid to ask questions. I always feel like, when I meet people, some of the ones that who really stand out are people who've taken the time to research about SPPR, ask us about campaigns we run, and ask some very thought through questions about the industry. And then that's what really makes you stand out as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I guess it's hard, right? Because the job market is so challenging and so competitive these days that the tendency is to kind of spray and pray and sort of oversaturate yourself in terms of the number of applications that you're sending out and the type of networking that you're doing. But I think you really need to be very specific and very targeted with your approach, right? In order to be successful. Would you agree with that?
Very targeted, and it has to align with what you believe in. So if you believe in a company or a brand or an area that's of interest to you, because if you're working in an area that doesn't interest you, it's going to reflect on your work as well. So I think that's an important element. So while you're customizing your approach on who you reach out to for internships, I think the important thing also to consider is what's an industry that I'm really passionate about, or I'd like to see a change in, or I'd like to be working in, because then that's where that work becomes less of a work, but more of a, process where you actually enjoy and give your best as well.
Yeah. And what about, again, going back to some of those, individuals who are reaching out to you, and obviously without giving any specifics, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see from folks who are, looking to maybe secure a job or work with you in some capacity? What are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing, those young individuals making in terms of their approach to sort of, the job search?
I wouldn't say if there are mistakes. I think there's a lot of education that happens. And as industry leaders, it's our job to help some of these younger people understand the industry and what are the areas that they could potentially see themselves growing in. I think what I've seen in the last couple of years that has sort of stood out is when people don't do the research about the company or the owner or the individual that they're talking to. Another mistake that I've seen is, in the resumes, you'll see a lot of quality control issues. So those are things that can, some people may ignore, but can stand out for others. So I think those sort of smaller things can end up being bigger issues. So maybe just paying attention to those quality control things would be important to think about as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's those I guess it's the soft skills, right? Like attention to detail, things like that really, I think, catch the eye of anyone who's senior. I think when you look at the hard skills, I'm sure you can attest to this. Those are all things that you don't necessarily expect someone with 1 or 2 years of experience to have fully honed yet, right? Those are things that you can build. But the soft skills, I find, are just so challenging to develop if they're not already inherently there.
I 100% agree. So for us, when we're looking at candidates, whether they are for internships or for bringing onto our team, we actually would look at their soft skills. Are they eager? Are they curious? Will they have a lot of initiative? Do they consume media? What's their knowledge of the Canadian landscape, the Canadian media landscape? Those are skills that are more important than the hard skills, because teaching them how to run meltwater or putting a media list together, that can be taught. But the attitude, the curiosity cannot be taught. And that is more important for the success of that individual.
For sure, for sure. And I think also just, being aware of trends, of, innovation in the industry, making sure that you're constantly upskilling and bringing value to a potential employer is so key as well, right? With that in mind, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, we hear a lot every day, I'm sure you do, we talk about here at Meridian all the time, but the evolution of AI and how that is impacting every industry, including PR and communications. Where do you see the PR industry evolving over the next, 5 or so years? And what should young professionals, but really all PR professionals, what should they be doing right now to prepare themselves for that?
So AI definitely continues to be a hot button topic, and it will probably continue to be that way for a long time. I think focusing on key tools that can be leveraged from an AI perspective is going to be critical for companies, brands, and PR professionals to consider. I think also keeping in mind where the earned play is going from a long-term perspective, from a PR, toolbox, that's something to keep in mind. And what are the right earned opportunities and paid opportunities and content opportunities, and how do you bring that together as part of a bigger PR mix? That's really critical. I also believe in the fact that your target audiences are becoming a lot more savvy. So consuming news, not just traditional news, but all kinds of news, is a must-have in today's landscape. So being that media junkie, consuming news, making sure you're waking up, you're reading, your different forms of communication that you consume daily will help you stay abreast of the trends, the innovation, the changes that are happening in the industry. And then fostering those relationships. We don't want to just be, sending pitches to media when we need them. Developing those relationships that they come to us when they've got a story, that's more meaningful, and that's where we are going to get more ROI for our clients. And that's the approach that I think is really important to think about as well.
Yeah, no, I love that advice. And I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of like what we went through, right? With, as again, 15 years ago when we sort of first met and started working together, the emergence of social media and how that was a real opportunity, I think, for anyone working in communications, because it at the end of the day was all about storytelling. And I think there was a lot of people in the industry that did really well carving out a niche for themselves as those social media strategists within PR agencies. And to me, AI is very similar, right? At the end of the day, it's all about storytelling. It's all about being able to take information, simplify it, and make meaning of it. And it's a great opportunity, I think, for anyone who's in communications and wants to sort of, really hone in on an area that can benefit an employer in the end of the day.
Yeah, and again, I just go back to what helped me when I first started, especially coming from another country, making that transition here. So for me to be effective and to be where I am today, I spent a lot of time trying to understand the landscape by reading the news, by making sure I stayed abreast of some of the current trends. And I think that's a must-have in today's landscape that'll help you, any younger person looking to make a name for themselves in PR, to really get noticed and differentiate themselves as well.
Yeah, no, I love it. Love it. Great advice. So what I want to do is I want to move on to just some sort of fun and interesting rapid fire questions. So by no means do you feel like you have to answer all of these, but I'll throw them out and we'll see where we land. So if you could work with any brand or any company, who or what would that brand be and why?
My love of golf, my recent
Yeah.
love of golf. So I'd love to do something with golf and juniors, and specifically, more for girls. There's a lot of, men and junior. My son's a junior golfer as well. So I'd love to do something with Golf Canada, or even on a U.S. national level, if we could do to promote women's golf and junior girls golf. So that would be like a real milestone moment for me.
I love that. Yeah, blending your professional passion and one of your favorite pastimes. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And empowering girls, right?
Yeah,
we want to empower our next generation, make sure that they are, doing things. I mean, you've got kids in sports, so I think that's a very important element for us in today's environment anyway. So empowering girls in a sport that is sometimes heavily male dominated, I think that would be really, really well.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. What about career advice? Give me the best piece of career advice that you ever received.
I actually always go by this, and everybody asks me that. So when I started off, the best piece of career advice that I got was make sure you identify 2 or 3 good mentors and make sure you always keep in touch with them. I have, I'd say, 5 mentors that I've had in all my global roles that I worked in. I still keep in touch with them. I have had been, very fortunate to have them be part of my career journey, ask them questions, help me in situations, and having and surrounding yourself with people who you can learn from, people who you respect, is incredibly meaningful, and it's really helpful to take you to the next part of your own journey as well. So look out for the mentors, make sure you have people that you can go to and learn from.
I think that's such an important takeaway, and I think that word I feel has a lot of ambiguity that surrounds it, right? And I've questioned or conversations with a lot of young professionals about this concept of mentorship, and I think there's some confusion about how it needs to be a formalized process that is regimented and has structure. But what I tell them all the time is that it doesn't need to be that, right? It really needs to be just someone that you respect, that you admire, that you have a way to connect with in whatever way, shape, or form, who can give you some guidance, provide you with some insight, and that you can go to kind of litmus check some of your decision making. And I do think that it's important to think of it that way. It's a relationship that you've got to develop, you've got to put time into. But too often, I think young professionals are looking for those mentorship programs or very specific opportunities that they can sort of, I guess, hunt out, as opposed to just looking for relationships that they can build slowly over time, as I know you've done in your life and in your career.
I can see it can be intimidating. So I think you've got to take the intimidation out of the factor, maybe identify and look at 2 or 3 people you admire, and then reach out to them on a human level and just say, I'll take myself as an example. When I first came here, I reached out to a few people saying, I'm new to the country. I'd love to grab 15 minutes of your time because I'm trying to understand the industry. I'd love to get some insights from you on what I should consider. Everyone will make time for 15 minutes for someone who's wanting to learn. And I think taking a different approach, maybe taking that intimidation factor out and really showcasing your own interest in their field and being transparent about what do you need from them and why just that 15 minutes, I think opens a lot of doors as well.
Yeah. And I mean, for you now, I'm sure the shoe is on the other foot, and I'm sure you've got people that are approaching you regularly, seeking out, your advice and trying to get your opinions on their career trajectory or what they should be doing. How do you feel about that now that you are on the receiving end of some of those requests?
Well, I've been very fortunate with the mentors I've had, and it's my time to give back. And I'm always happy to talk to people and see, what are ways and opportunities that I can help them with, or are they people within my network that I can connect them with as well? So it's not just helping them with, oh, is there a role at SPPR, but also thinking about who within my network. And I've learned from the best, having worked with people, Linda Andros from Apex, for example. So that's where I think about what are ways we can help the younger generation, who are people I could connect them to, and I'm always happy to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And it kind of goes back to what you mentioned in terms of the media appreciating someone that has a little more like a predictable cadence with how they outreach, right? I think that's really important too when you're networking. You can't just reach out to someone when you're looking for a role, you're looking for an opportunity, right? You've got to nurture those relationships, and you've got to reach out to, a potential mentor, but not necessarily under the guise of I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for a role, right? Listen to what they have to say, learn from them, and if you're good at what you do and if you present yourself well, then they will likely be able to go to bat for you. And if there are roles available, maybe you'll be first on their list, right?
And also think about ways to give back to the industry. Like I always believe, when I started off at Apex, they were very big on joining CPRS or IBC, which has been quite transformational for a lot of people. So looking at industry associations, seeing if there's a way to volunteer, gets you recognized, gets you face time, helps you to be involved in the industry. So those are all great ways to network and get your name out there as well. And I certainly think that's an important consideration for younger people trying to navigate the PR world today.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. The next question I had was, what is one myth about our industry that drives you crazy? I know that despite over a decade of trying to get my parents to understand what I do for a living, they still have no idea. But I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are on that sort of the PR myths that drive you just nuts.
So when I hear all publicity is good publicity, that drives me crazy. And the reason for that, especially in today's viral world, that you've got to be strategic on your PR efforts, your brand, your reputation, your trust, all that is very important. So your PR has to be thoughtful, it has to be purposeful, and it's not all about publicity. It's about building a brand, it's about building reputation, and that's where you have to think about the opportunity being the right one or not, and then sort of determining if that's something you want to play in or not. So when I hear that phrase that all publicity is good publicity, I'm like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, anybody who's been through a crisis can attest to the facts are not exactly what they seem with that statement.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, if you were not working in PR, what career do you think you would have pursued and why?
So when I was younger, I always thought I'd be a teacher because I loved playing with kids. I grew up in a family, in an extended joint family. I'm number 1 to 13 under me. So we lived in like it almost felt like we had our own home daycare. And so I always thought I'd be a teacher, but obviously that's not the direction I went in. And here we are today.
That's awesome. I didn't know that about you. So that's very, very interesting for me personally. Well, this has been great. I think, again, thank you so much for sharing all of your insight, all of the knowledge that you have, built up over the course of your career. Really, really beneficial insights. Is there anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't get into, or any kind of final words of wisdom that you want to share?
I think we're at a very exciting time. There's lots that's happening in the world, in the news today, that would benefit from strong PR messaging and narrative and storytelling opportunities. So anybody who's trying to make a way into this, industry for themselves, they should think about passion points. They should think about what is it that's important to them before they embark on their career journey in terms of where they want to go and how they want to navigate. Don't be afraid to ask for help and reach out to people within your network. That's where you'll find the most beneficial, relationships and success as well.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you again, Sonia. I really appreciate it. And for anybody who's watching, if you want to learn more about Sonia, her work, her agency, where's the best place that they can find you?
You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us at sppublicrelations.com. And Eric, thanks so much for having me today. This was really fun and appreciate your time as well.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you so much, Sonia.
All right, take care. Bye.